give us what we need. Hey!
I listen to KBLA and I love the commercials. I know what the commercials mean. I also, if I'm looking and trying to figure something out, I need something to talk to me that might hit me. And it happens on TV because, you know, every time they show a sporting event, they got the pharmaceutical companies back to back to back telling people how to fix the sickness on the same stuff that they sell them. So we get it.
Yep, we get it too, Chuck D. And that's why at KBLA Talk 1580, we don't black down.
Drop it! Our freedom of speech is freedom of death. We got to fight the powers that be. Fight the power! Fight the power! Fight the power!
Float straight out of our lids. Them, they got booed by these hard rock Brooklyn kids. Us floor rush when they DJ booming classics. You dig the crew on the fattest hip hop record. He tucks the kinks and sinks into the sounds. She frequents deep, fatter joints called undergrounds. Our funk zooms like you hit the Mary Jane. They flock to booms, man, boogie had to change. Who freaks the clips with mad amount percussion? Where kinky hair goes to unthought of dimensions. Why is it so fly? Cause hip hop kept some drama. When butterfly rock the light blue suede pumas. What by the cut? We push it off the corner. How was the buzz entire hip hop era? Was fresh in fact since they started saying Audi. Cause funk's made fat from right beneath my hood. The pooba of the styles like Miles and shit. Like 60s funky worms with waves and perms. Just sending junky rhythms right down your block. We beat to rap, what key beat to lock. But I'm cool like that. 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 I'm cool. I'm cool.
We beat the chocolates, taps on my raps. She innovates after sweeter cat naps. He at the funk club with the vibrate. Them they be crazy down with the 5 link. It can kick a plan, then a crowd burst. Me, I be digging it with the bug verse. Us, we be freaking till dawn peaks an eye. He gets a stranger smile, so I say hi. Who understood? Yeah, understood the plans. Him heard of it and put it to his hands. What I just flip, let borders get loose. How to consume all the beaches like juice. If it's the shit, we'll lift it off the plastic. The babes will go spastic. Hip hop game's a classic. Pimp play a shot, it don't matter. I'm fatter, axe butter.
Yes, cool like that. Welcome to Areva Martin in real time here on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm your special guest host, Farajii Muhammad. Oh my goodness, are we cool like that? Yes, we are. Hopefully it gets a little cooler in the great city of Los Angeles. Folks, I am so grateful that you are tuning in and wanting to be a part of the conversations that we're having today. And yesterday we had so many great voices, and today we are not going to break that tradition. I am very, very excited to be checking in with my sister, who is doing some wonderful work in changing the conversation, giving us a new frame to look at things. And we're going to be joined in a few moments by Associate Professor in the School of Public Policy at the University of Maryland, my sister, Dr. Neon B. Carter. She is author of the award-winning book, American While Black, African Americans, Immigrations, and the Limits of Citizenship. That's just one of the many contributions that she brings to the table of the conversation around culture, politics, race, and so much more. So we're going to be checking in with her in just a few moments, but we got to invite you to do your due diligence, a little bit of housekeeping notes. But we want to invite you to join the conversation. As we're having the conversation on air, we want you to have those conversations and make the connections with us online. So make sure you check us out at KBLA1580.com first. That's our website where you can find all of the latest news and information about the things that we are doing here in the community and across the country. And it's a big time for KBLA. As of course, we are kicking off our third year by our beloved founder, Brother Tavis Smiley. But this is also a big time because Brother Tavis is having his book release. It is going to be hitting the shelves very, very soon, just in a few days this month. But he's talking about the Covenant with Black America, 20 years later. Y'all remember those State of the Black union conversations that Brother Tavis had hosted and facilitated, and he brought all of those fantastic voices together. Well, guess what? Now those critical conversations are in one book, and it's been 20 years. It really has been 20 years since our brother has been having those discussions. But guess what? These discussions are still relevant today, because we see that our interests and everything else that's happening in this country, we're moving into a lot of different spaces. And so sometimes you just need a reminder as to what is really important, what are the things that we need to focus our attention on, and most importantly, how do we move forward in bringing a different reality in this country. So make sure you check out KBLA 1580 to look at that, as well as signing up to be on our email list, checking out all of the latest dynamic programs that we have, all of the dope hosts that we have on it. And of course, we still are continuing this year with our KBLA Climate Justice Campaign that's going to be happening all year long. We do not want to forget about that at all. So we're still on that track. And so much more can be found on our website at KBLA1580.com. Also, make sure you follow us on social media at KBLA1580. You can follow us on Instagram, on the X platform. Also, make sure you follow all of your favorite voices, starting with the first one, Areva Martin. That's right, the sister who I am guest hosting for. Areva Martin, you can find her on all the social media platforms, as well as yours truly. You can find me at The Real Farajii on Instagram and at Farajii on Twitter. I would love to connect with you there. And all of the dynamic voices, Brother Tavis Smiley, Dominique DePrima. We got Dr. Nee Corte, one of our great contributors here and host of A More Perfect Union here on KBLA Talk 1580, and so many more folks. So do yourself a little favor and connect with those who are keeping you informed, keeping you educated, and keeping you entertained to some degree, and most importantly, who are showing you what it means to be unapologetically black and unapologetically progressive. So make sure y'all do that. Also, make sure y'all check out my sister Adrienne Shropshire with the new show, The Black Pack, that airs on Fridays from 4 to 6 p.m. Here on KBLA Talk 1580 and all of the other great programs. So that's just a little something for you to stay tuned for that. But in a moment, I want to bring my sister, Dr. Niambi Carter, on so that way we can talk a little bit more about this moment that we're in. We had such a great conversation with Capitol Hill correspondent yesterday, Ashley Banks. She started us off this week talking about the moment, her moment, talking about that now famous Time cover of Vice President Harris. And I want to kind of continue a little bit in that line, in that frame, so that way we can understand what time we're really looking at. What is this moment? And if you've been listening here on KBLA Talk 1580, from this point all the way up until Election Day, folks, we got Kamala covered. So we want to look at all the different angles, not just her as a personality, not even just her as a political leader, but what is she doing? What does her campaign, the momentum behind this campaign, the things that she's standing for, the things that we have been talking about, how are they in alignment? How there may be some differences? And more importantly, how do we move forward in making sure that we are on the same track? But today, I wanted to talk to Sister and Dr. Niambi Carter because, one, there has been some news about Vice President Harris taking the lead in critical blue wall states. That's based on a new poll, so we want to get Dr. Carter's take on that. Also, we talked a little bit about this yesterday, but despite Kamala, there's a piece that came out that from LA Progressive. And they put out this piece. Despite Kamala, U.S. women's representation is stagnating. That women are more than half of the nation's population, yet women are still significantly absent from the seats of power at all levels of government. Woo! Sounds like an opportunity to disrupt the patriarchy, right, Andy? Should we disrupt it? Should we add a little bit more of little touch of femininity into the conversation. We're going to talk a little bit about that with our sister, Dr. Niambi Carter. So without further ado, let's bring Dr. Carter in as we have these conversations. Good afternoon, Dr. Carter. How you feeling this evening?
I'm doing well. How are you, Farajii?
I am doing well as well. I am definitely grateful, and I thank you so much for joining me for this conversation. We got a couple of minutes before we take our first pause, but I wanted to kind of get your take on this. Let's talk about your take on what you saw. I got Ashley Banks to talk to share her take as a young black woman, but as a woman who has studied politics, you are a political science, you are a professor. How are you looking at this moment, according to what Time Magazine had put out there yesterday for their cover? How do you define this moment?
Well, I would say, it's the moment we thought we had with Barack Obama in 2008. I think the world is certainly different. I mean, the world is different from 2016, right, when Hillary Clinton ran. And I think what we see is at least a potential for movement. I mean, and we're not talking about great big changes. I think people forget that sometimes small changes can add up to big ones. And it's not to say that I'm an incrementalist or anybody else should be, but that's the way our system is set up. It's set up for incremental change. And at least right now it seems that folks have who are in the positions, right, to make some of these changes are taking note and seeing that what people want isn't just superficial change, right? Don't just put any old body in there. Actually put somebody in there that wants to listen, that wants to read the room, and that wants to bring people in. I mean, in some ways, this reminds me of Jesse Jackson in 84 and 88. He brought people into the process who had been ignored for a really long time or felt like there was nothing here for them. And I think we're seeing a little bit of that. I don't know what the numbers will be of new registrants, but there certainly seem to be a lot of people who are taking note of politics for the first time and seem to be legitimately excited.
I want to kind of delve a little bit into that because I haven't heard the name of Jesse Jackson and Vice President Harris in the same space. So I think that's quite, you know where I'm going with this, right? So, I haven't heard that comparison. So I want to delve deep a little bit into that. We're going to take our a quick pause. When we move forward, as we come forward, let's go into that. Because Jesse Jackson certainly did some things that opened up the door, not just for President Barack Obama, even Vice President Harris. He's done some things to open up the door for black political leadership in a very, very big way. And Dr. Carter, I am so glad that you brought him into the conversation, and more importantly, how we can look at this moment through that frame. Folks, stay with us. We got a lot to talk about with Dr. Niambi Carter here on Areva Martin in Real Time on KBLA Talk 1580.
She's the real deal in real time. You're listening to Areva Martin in Real Time on KBLA Talk 1580. Tavis is like George and Wheezy. He's moving on up. Last year, Tavis was number 45 on the Talkers magazine list of the 100 most important radio talk show hosts in America. Wait for it. Wait for it. The 2024 list was recently released, and Tavis has jumped to number 33 on the list of the nation's most important talkers, making him the highest-ranked African-American on the coveted roster. Congratulations to Tavis Smiley from all of us at KBLA Talk 1580. We've got you black.
Work is busy, and home, Mom, pretty much the same. But you wouldn't know it because my skin doesn't look stressed thanks to Olay Retinol Body Wash. Its hydrating formula is packed with vitamin B3 complex plus retinol. I use Olay Retinol Body Wash to transform my skin from dry to moisturized and visibly renewed. Sure, I still have stress, but my skin looks amazing. Try Olay Retinol Body Wash for visibly renewed skin in just 14 days. Also try Retinol 24 Body Lotion.
Girl, I have a secret. When I get stressed out, I get sweaty. That's why I use Secret Clinical Antiperspirant. It's like my own secret weapon. For 72 hours, I get Secret's strongest protection against sweat caused by stress, heat, and activity, because you know how crazy life can get. Plus, it's made with advanced odor fighters that don't just cover up smelliness. They help prevent it from happening in the first place. Believe me, if I weren't wearing Secret, I'd be a hot, smelly mess. Thankfully, Secret works.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 believes in community empowerment. LA's 99 neighborhood councils form the grassroots level of the Los Angeles city government. The system was created to connect LA's diverse communities to City Hall. While neighborhood council board members are volunteers, they are also public officials elected to office by the members of their community. Neighborhood councils advocate on issues like homelessness, housing, land use, emergency preparedness, public safety, parks, transportation, and sustainability. They also provide local expertise on the delivery of city services to their various communities. Neighborhood councils are open to participation by anyone who is a part of the fabric of daily life in said community. This includes those who live, work, or own property or a business. If you are interested in stepping up to join your local neighborhood council, visit www.empowerla.org. That's empowerla.org. It's time to think globally, but act locally. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
The way we spend our time defines who we are. You're listening to Areva Martin in real time on KBLA Talk 1580.
And folks, yes, it does. I am your special guest host, Farajii Muhammad, sitting in for my sister Areva Martin. And we are just starting a conversation talking about what's going on in this particular moment. I got joining me for this first hour for the discussion, Dr. Nyambi Carter. And Dr. Carter, who is one of our great contributors here on Areva Martin in Real Time. She is a professor. She is an author. She is an analyst and a scholar. But her areas of interest include immigration, policy, racial and ethnic policy, public opinion, political behavior. So she is the perfect person. I'm saying all that, Dr. Carter, to say that you are the perfect person to have this conversation with, because you are looking at this from a number of different lenses. Your work is very intersectional. There's a lot of a lot of the work that you do, especially as a professor, as a scholar, as a writer, you're looking at this from a lot of different ways. But you're bringing up this frame of this moment that we're in, and you brought in one of our great ones, the Reverend Jesse Jackson, and saying that Reverend Jesse Jackson's presidential campaign is something that we need to consider in looking at this moment. I want to kind of dig a little bit deeper on this, Dr. Carter. Please explain more about why you bring the Reverend Jesse Jackson into this conversation.
Well, I brought him up because in 1984, when he first ran, and again in 1988, when he was better financed, better organized, and had, I think, a better sense of what it took to run a presidential campaign, one of the things he said in 1984 was Ronald Reagan won by the margin of despair. And he talked a lot about making sure that in major cities, like in Boston, D.C., Philadelphia, Detroit, right, Milwaukee, that we were registering Black and brown and Native people, poor whites. He had a rainbow coalition. He knew that in order to win, he would need a broad-based coalition of voters. I mean, in some ways you can say, Barack Obama took that logic to the bank, right?
Right.
20 years later. But what he said was, we have to have a ground game, right? We actually have to go to the people that we actually need to show up, because we know the kind of reliable voter. But what about that voter who's never been activated? And what he was able to do was usher in a cadre of young Black voters who became lifelong voters, who were able to vote for the first time in 1984 and again in 1988. And in 88, he won the youth vote. He beat out all of his competitors in the Democratic primary for the youth vote. And I think that's going to be central to this campaign. They're going to bring in a lot of young people who become lifelong voters. They might not stay Democrats all their life, but will become lifelong voters. But also, you got to bring in people that people might neglect. You have to wring every bit of support you can from Native communities, from Latino communities, from LGBTQ plus communities, Black communities, poor communities, right? You got to bring people in. And I think that's what Jackson taught us and doesn't get enough credit for, quite frankly.
So I'm hearing you say that because, people, how do we look at that? There are a number, now there are articles coming out to say that this, I remember 3 weeks ago, there was a question, can Vice President Harris, can she capitalize off of the coalition that was established by Barack Obama? My first question in that regard is, should we even pose a question like this? Because there are some differences between, I think people just kind of look at, oh, you have white people supporting a black candidate like in Vice President Harris, just like Barack Obama. You have young people who are looking to support Vice President Harris, just like Barack Obama. But I don't know if it's really that simple, or is it?
I don't think it's that simple. I mean, certainly between, Barack Obama's first 2 runs and now, a lot has changed. We had a global pandemic. We had Donald Trump. We had a January 6th. The world looked very different. Politics isn't what it was even, 8 years ago to now. I mean, we've seen how quickly we have slid. And we were moving in that direction. I don't want to say this is all on Donald Trump. We were moving in that direction when we were talking about alternative facts. People might forget about that. But we were talking about basically lies as being okay as long as they were part of your political truth. Long before Donald Trump came to be. All of that is to say, though, when Barack Obama was competing, he was competing against John McCain and Mitt Romney, people who we understood as Republicans. We might have had deep disagreements with them. Donald Trump is not a Republican in the way that we have thought about Republicans traditionally.
No, not at all.
And so you cannot fight him the way you did a George W. Bush or Ronald Reagan or some other Republican,
or John McCain or somebody. Right.
Exactly. You have to think about this differently. And I think even voters are different. They are less allegiant to parties. The way we consume media and news now is different. Even in 10 years, there's been a whole sea change. Nobody watches TV. People don't listen to the radio in the same way, right? There used to be a collective experience that we had. And now we are all siloed in our information bubbles. So the way that we even reach voters is going to be different than the way, the Obama campaign did it. I don't think she will get perhaps Obama levels of support. I don't know if she has to either. But what is true, she is going to have to dig around. I used to rummage through your grandma's purse to find that candy at the bottom, all the way in the corner. She's going to have to go to the corners of the Midwest and of the South and, all of these places and dig around like Jesse Jackson said, and pick up these little rocks that were laying around to defeat this Goliath. Because, Donald Trump may be a lot of things, but he's not dumb, and his voters are very activated. And we need Democratic voters to be as activated, or democratically inclined voters to be as activated.
Absolutely. I'm looking at a piece from the American Enterprise Institute, Dr. Carter, which is a public policy think tank, which is, putting out some information, some data around this idea of the Obama coalition versus the Harris coalition, and a gentleman by the name of Roy Texera, who describes himself as the liberal patriot. He wrote a piece just a couple of weeks ago, said the Harris coalition is not the second coming of the Obama coalition. He said that, for example, start with the working class. While Obama carried them by 4 points 4 years later, Clinton lost them by 3 points 4 years after that. Biden lost them by 4 points, and 4 years later, Harris in the new New York Times Siena poll is losing them by 15 points. So we're looking at, like you mentioned earlier, there's a different ground that Vice President Harris is working on. There's a different foundation. There's a different moment. And I always think it's interesting, as we look at politics, we try to compare and contrast moments, support, and all of those things. But I always find it interesting because it's like, what was happening 4 years ago, it seems like a lifetime ago, right, compared to what's happening right now. And things change so much. And now I think one of the big things, and I think this is probably a challenge for us as constituents, as citizens of this country, things are happening and changing so fast, Dr. Carter, that it's hard for people to keep up. And I mean, not just in terms of policy, but I'm talking about cultural support. If you look at for instance, if you look at the case of marijuana, where the country stood on marijuana 4 years ago is dramatically different from where we stand on marijuana, legalizing marijuana now. And so when we're looking at these snapshots, looking at these data sets, when we're looking at these polls, how do we make sure that we are putting them in the right context, like we're really seeing them for what they are, but keeping in mind that things will change?
Well, I mean, I think that's a really good point, Farajii. I mean, all of this is cultural, right?
Right.
Times are different, right? The way we feel about sex and marriage and
having
children is different now.
Absolutely.
Exactly. Than it was, in our parents' day, or even when we were coming up in the 90s and early 2000s. So culture is an ever-shifting thing. I think when we get bombarded with all these numbers, we have to always ask, who did the work? How many people did they talk to? When did they talk to them? And if we're talking about Black people and other communities of color that some people consider hard to study or hard to poll, how many of us did they talk to? And if you look through those numbers sometimes, it's very few of us that they're talking to. And this is not to discount the work or to say that it's invalid, but I think we have to take it with some skepticism. And it doesn't mean that, like, oh, they're lying. It just means that, oh, there are things when we're doing polling that we have to be cognizant of. So always know that, the polls are only as good as the information that people give us. These are self-reports. People make up stuff all the time, right? That's why we're surprised when Bradley didn't win in L.A., right? It's like, oh, we thought he was going to win. Or they thought Doug Wilder was going to win by a landslide in Virginia, because people don't always tell us the most accurate information.
Absolutely.
But I do think it's clear whether you're talking about drugs, we're talking about families and expectation, we are, it's so interesting. I keep going back to Jesse Jackson because I think, again, everybody is of a time, even if they're not in the right time. And when we think about what Jesse Jackson was talking about in 1988 in particular, he was ahead of his time.
Yeah.
And so many of the things that he was talking about, like taxing the most wealthy to fund social welfare programs, right? Not just, women with children, but also talking about elder care and other things.
Hey, Dr. Carter, I want you to hold that thought. We got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, let's continue to have that, because I think that's an excellent point that you're making. Folks, stay with us. We still got more to check in with as we talk to Dr. Niambi Carter here on Areva Martin in real time on KBLA Talk 1580.
Areva time is the right time. More of Areva Martin in real time when we come forward.
I'm Amber Payton. Here's the latest on the Black Information Network. The man who held up Brooklyn's so-called bling bishop live on camera was sent to prison Monday, but for less time than the bishop he robbed. A federal judge sentenced Saquon Pollock to 7.25 years in prison for the 2022 robbery of Bishop Lamore Whitehead during a streamed sermon. Pollock argued for a reduced sentence because Whitehead's been convicted of stealing from his parishioners, but the judge said no, calling Pollock a robbing hood, not a Robin Hood. Bishop Whitehead, who is Black, was sentenced to 9 years in June. The Minnesota state trooper accused of killing an African-American motorist last summer during a traffic stop is back at work. Ryan Londrigan is back on the job in Golden Valley. He originally was charged with shooting and killing Ricky Cobb II in July of 2023. The Hennepin County attorney decided to drop the charges. Londrigan was then exonerated of all wrongdoing. That's the latest. I'm Amber Payton on your home for 24/7 News, the Black Information Network, and BINnews.com.
Be advised, in Angeles National Forest, a brush fire has San Gabriel Canyon Road northbound between East Fork and Crystal Lake Road closed, with no estimated time of reopening. Please be advised and expect some delays throughout the evening. In Irwindale, a stall is blocking the carpool lane of the 210 East side of Irwindale Avenue, with a 15 to 20 minute backup running heavy from Santa Anita Avenue. In Harbor City, accident continues to block the center lane of the 110 South before PCH, and CHP is now on scene. Delays in Anaheim Hills continue up to 20 minutes from Glasso Street, Kramer Boulevard split on the 91 East after Ware Canyon Road, Yorba Linda Boulevard split as an accident on the right shoulder.
Some people just know the best rate for you is a rate based on you with Allstate, not one based on anyone else. So if you drive safely, you could save money. Good to know. Visit allstate.com or call for a quote today.
Is this the time? This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
LA Sparks forward Jerika Hamby is suing the WNBA and Las Vegas Aces for discrimination and unfair labor practices. Hamby played for the Las Vegas franchise from 2015 to 2022. Hamby claims she was mistreated by the franchise after she got pregnant and had a baby. Hamby is including the WNBA in her lawsuit because of her claims the league did not properly investigate her complaints. If you want to get a jump on tickets for the Summer Olympics here in LA in 2028, here's the website to get details: la28.org, la28.org. Florida A&M University is looking for a new athletic director. The new president of the HBCU school, Timothy Beard, dismissed Tiffany Dawn Sykes after she has served as AD for 3 years. Dawn Sykes' arrival at FAMU coincided with the rise of the football program. FAMU was the HBCU national champion last season. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
Yeah, y'all, come on. Here come the drums.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we fight the power every day.
Yeah, gotta give us what we want. Gotta give us what we need. Hey.
I listen to KBLA and I love the commercials. I know what the commercials mean. I also, if I'm looking and trying to figure something out, I need something to talk to me that might hit me. And it happens on TV because, you know, every time they show a sporting event, they got the pharmaceutical companies back to back telling people how to fix the sickness on the same stuff that they sell them. So we get it.
Yep, we get it too, Chuck D. And that's why at KBLA Talk 1580, we don't black down.
Drop it! Our freedom of speech is freedom of death. We got to fight the powers that be. Fight the power! Fight the power! Fight the power!
Environmental justice is racial justice.
Environmental justice is social justice.
This is KBLA Talk 1580.
Hello, KBLA listeners. This is Senator Steve Bradford, and I'm inviting you to the 21st Annual Gardena Jazz Festival, Sunday, August 25th at Raleigh Park. And this year's lineup will be amazing, opening out with Fernando Pullum Youth Orchestra. The Inner City Youth Orchestra Jazz Ensemble under the direction of Chuck Dickerson will be cooking with biscuits and gravy. The amazing saxophonist Mindy A. Bear, 8-time Grammy Award-winning a cappella group Take 6, the always soulful Mesa, and the grown and sexy Will Downey Jr. You won't want to miss it. Tickets are on sale. General admission is $30. Box seating is $75. And unfortunately, our reserved seating is all sold out. So for ticket information, you want to go to GardenaJazzFestival.com/tickets. That's GardenaJazzFestival.com/tickets. Or call 310-217-9537. Look forward to seeing you for a day of fun, music, and family on August 25th for the 21st Annual Gardena Jazz Festival. And remember, well, alcohol-free, smoke-free environment. See you soon.
KBLA Talk 1580 invites you to join us for a book party celebrating The Covenant with Black America 20 years later. Almost 2 decades ago, the Covenant book, compiled and edited by Tavis Smiley, climbed to #1 on the New York Times bestsellers list and stayed there for weeks. The first book by a black-owned publisher to achieve such a feat. The urgency of the issues that matter most to black fellow citizens has only intensified, especially in this critical election year. On Wednesday evening, August 14th, 6 to 9 p.m., come meet Tavis Smiley alongside Covenant contributors including Cornel West, Connie Rice, Mark Ridley Thomas, Elisa Orduna, Tyrone Howard, and Melina Abdullah as they sign copies of The Covenant with Black America 20 years later. You can purchase your books on site and get them autographed. That's Wednesday evening, August 14th, 6 to 9 p.m. in the city of Los Angeles. Admission is free, but you must register at KBLA1580.com. At KBLA Talk 1580,
we've got your black. There's no time
Let's get back to more of Areva Martin in real time on KBLA Talk 1580.
Let's get back to Dr. Nyambi Carter as we're talking about Vice President Harris, how she's taken the lead in critical blue wall states, according to a new poll that was conducted by New York Times and Siena College poll that was published just a couple of days ago over the weekend. This poll was conducted between August 5th through the 9th and asked likely voters in Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, which can be considered to be the three of the most important states that are key to winning this election. Those individuals were asked about their attitudes towards Vice President Harris and former President Trump. When asked who they would vote for if the election were held today, Harris received 50% support to Trump's 46%, which is a marked improvement compared to President Joe Biden's performance against Trump in the earlier Times poll. So she is putting some heat on the former president, Dr. Carter. And as a result of that, I mean, we see what's going on with him. I mean, he's struggling to try to figure out how to stop this momentum. I saw a piece in CNN. They said that he's trying to blunt the blow of this momentum where he's trying to say everything from, I just saw this today, he's like, oh, she's a beautiful woman, even though he called her out of her name just a few days ago, according to the New York Times. And then he said, oh, well, her last rally in Michigan, that was an AI photo, even though that wasn't true. And then he went on this whole rant on his conversation with ex-owner Elon Musk last night about her. I mean, he's trying to figure this thing out. And even though the Republican leadership has said, look, do not talk about gender and race, you're talking to Donald Trump. He's not listening.
And that's all he has, right? Like, Donald Trump could go after her on policy. I think that's what they're using J.D. Vance to do.
But you got no policy to go after somebody on policy.
And you actually have to care about that, right?
That's true.
A lot of Donald Trump's gravitas has been, I'm just going to be as rude and mean and audacious and just say whatever I want to say.
Right.
And that's what people pass for people as like sticking it to the Washington elite. But now that people finally got what they wanted, which is we just want a candidate that we can be happy to vote for one.
Yeah.
And now that they have that, he's like, oh, I actually have to clock in. I have to actually come to work now. And everything that I know to do, which is be mean and insulting and abrasive and rude and nasty, isn't going to work. Because if I say too much about her gender, that's going to turn off some women. If I talk about her race, well, my running mate has an Indian wife and half Indian children and Indian in-laws. We don't want to do that. So, he's really stuck because he can't go back to his old playbook. And let's be clear, Donald Trump wants the power. Donald Trump wants to stave off these lawsuits. I don't really think he cares about the business of governing.
No.
I think he likes being
You
called
don't say,
the president.
Dr. Carter. You don't say. No, he doesn't.
Sometimes it's worth saying
Yeah.
because people seem to think that, that people just get this job and that the job sort of sorts itself out. No, you actually have to do it. And it's not an easy job. It's not a job that can solve everything. We don't have an imperial president, much to Donald Trump's chagrin, right? He would prefer that. But you actually do have to get up for this. So as much as we might have talked about Joe Biden, at least he could get up. At least he got up. At least he did it. And now that he has somebody who is younger and more spry and is certainly formidable, there's not a lot that he can say. Oh, she failed the bar. Well, she passed it eventually. You've never passed anything.
Right.
You were born on third and thought you hit a triple. You were born rich. You've been rich. But you've also filed bankruptcy multiple times. You've cheated people out of money.
Right.
And not paid work people, So, Donald Trump doesn't know what to do.
So I want to go back to that analogy that you used that you referenced Reverend Jesse Jackson, right? Because I feel like that's the common theme for this conversation that we've been having, that Jesse Jackson has done some amazing things in setting up this moment for Vice President Kamala Harris. That he understood the dynamic, he understood the value, the importance of coalition building. He recognized that even as a progressive, pro-black man who was raised up, he is a son of the civil rights movement. He's a son of the Black Power movement, right? He went through those times that he understood that it came down to policy, right? That he understood that. I never forget the book. And I was reading about the great 1972 gathering of of black political leaders in Gary, Indiana. And this gathering was sort of the I would say the launching pad. I mean, Jesse was already politicized, but in terms of mainstream political aspirations, Jesse Jackson, I think, used that moment where you had the individuals of so many black leaders within this national black political convention, that they gathered in a high school gym in Gary, Indiana, to figure out the political, or to lay out a political vision for Black America at that time. And it was during that period that I think it was crystallized for Reverend Jackson that, you know what, I need to take this level of activism to the next level and run for office in 1984 and then subsequently in 1988. So help us to give us a little bit more about that Jackson history for a moment, as we got about a minute or so. So give us a little bit more of that Jackson history.
Real quick, what Jackson thought was really taken from Shirley Chisholm, which is if I can get to the convention, then I can apply some pressure and push the Democratic agenda to the left.
You talking about and Dr. Carter, you saying the Democratic National Convention, not the Black Political Convention.
Oh, not the Black Political Convention, but like you said, Gary is important because what Gary didn't do was stand by Shirley Chisholm, who was running for the Democratic nomination in 72, and she wanted to do what Jesse Jackson actually did in 84 and better in 88, which is, we know we're not going to win, but let's hold our delegates until we get to that convention and make the Democrats promise something that is further to the left for us. Jackson was able to do that because he saw Shirley Chisholm try. She failed, and she was not able to galvanize black support, but that's a story for another day.
Right. That's the patriarchy for another day. Go ahead.
Yes, but that lesson was really important. She had small donors. She gathered up her delegates, and she said, let's push. Jackson was able to do that in 88 because he had enough delegates to at least make them pay attention. So he had a primetime spot on the floor and gave a convention speech. But when he talked about Palestine, when he talked about apartheid, and holding sanctions against South Africa for the way that they treated black South Africans, that was him, right? That was able to, and of course, loads of black people who were organizing, but that was him being able to use that political savvy he had and that organizing prowess to push Democrats on that issue, to push Democrats on social welfare, to push them on poverty policy. Now, did he get everything he wanted? No, politics is not about getting everything you want, but it's about who can be persuaded, who can be pushed. And Jackson understood that, and I think that was a very important lesson. The rules are different now, but that's why Jackson is so significant, and that's why Gary was also important.
Absolutely. I love the way you put that. You've done this before, Dr. Carter. You've done this before. Put it in a nice package for us to understand. I love it. Look, we got to take another quick pause. When we come forward, let's continue the conversation. Dr. Carter talked about Shirley Chisholm. Well, let's talk about the fact that even though we see a Shirley Chisholm and we see a Vice President Harris, there is still a significant absence from the seats of power at all levels of government where women are present. Let's have that part of the conversation on the other side. Stay with us. It's the Areva Martin in real time here on KBLA Talk 1580.
She's the real deal in real time. You're listening to Areva Martin in real time on KBLA Talk 1580.
Oh, man. Looks like Bobby needs a ride to the airport again.
Grab the keys. Who's taking Auntie and her friends to the swap meet?
Grab the keys.
How about we drop these boxes off at Miss Johnson?
Grab the keys.
Whether you're giving rides or hauling gear, you're all about getting things done. So do it all in a Chevy SUV. From the versatile Equinox and Sporty Blazer to the roomy Traverse, our lineup of SUVs will carry you through every adventure. All you have to do is...
grab the keys?
That's how we do. Head to your local Chevy dealer, where well-qualified buyers get 1.9% financing on all 2024 Malibu, Colorado, Blazer, Equinox, Trailblazer, and Traverse Limited models. Chevrolet. Together, let's drive.
1.9% APR for 36 months. Monthly payment is $28.60 for every $1,000 you finance. Example down payment 15.8%. Must finance with GM Financial. Some customers may not qualify. Not available with lease and some other offers. Take new retail delivery by 7/1/24.
Tips to help improve basic steps for building a budget in 2024. Building a budget can help you achieve and reach your financial goals. With a budget, you can keep track of your spending, avoid and get out of debt, limit overspending, pay bills on time, and build solid savings habits. What's the best way to get started? Figure out how much to set aside for expenses, like rent, mortgage, bills, groceries, and entertainment. Understanding your past financial habits can help you make the proper adjustments for your budget. Adjusting to a budget can take time as you work to find the right balance, but keep working on it. For more financial health tips, visit chase.com or stop by a local branch. This segment is sponsored by J.P. Morgan Chase & Company. Join Black Women for Wellness 25th Annual Reproductive Justice Conference on August 15th at the California Endowment Center. Unite to protect Black women's rights and become an advocate for change. Tickets on sale now at bwwla.org. That's bwwla.org.
We've got a lot to talk about.
I'm Reverend Gerald, the life coach. Is someone you love struggling with addiction and mental illness? Is improving your family's health important? Want to leave a legacy that your family can grow? Are you ready to enhance your perception of life experiences? Then wake up weekends at 7 a.m. with Urban Family Focus and get the wisdom, opportunity, resources, and motivation to live your best life. Join the conversation on Urban Family Focus Saturday and Sunday at 7 a.m.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black. The way we spend our time defines who we are. You're listening to Areva Martin in real time on KBLA Talk 1580.
Absolutely, folks, and we're spending our time well today as we check it in with Sister Dr. Niambi Carter, as we're having a conversation about a number of things, especially in light of the political space that we find ourselves in. And Dr. Carter, in the final few minutes that we have in today's conversation that I'm truly, truly enjoying, so I thank you once again for being here with me. But the final part of this conversation, I want us to focus a little bit on women representation and how there's a new piece that commentary that was written about this idea that even though we're seeing Kamala Harris, Vice President Harris, making the type of strides that she is making, especially in this time. And we can go back to the history of one Shirley Chisholm that you have referenced earlier, that women are more than half of the nation's populations, according to this op-ed, but we're finding that women are still significantly absent from the seats of power at all levels of government. And just wanted to kind of share a little bit of what they have to say, and then Dr. Carter, get your take on it. They said, despite the fact that Vice President Kamala Harris is poised to win the Democratic Party's presidential nomination, and she has, women remain vastly underrepresented. Women are more than half of the nation's population, but are absent from the seat of power. They hold just 1/3 of all elected positions in 2024 and only 28% of all congressional seats. Dr. Carter. And so it makes me think that people often have, this is a question that I'm sure you've heard many, many times as much as I have. Are we ready for a woman president, right? Not just a black woman, not just an Indian woman, but any woman president if we do not see that same representation in the halls of Congress, if we're not seeing it from the federal level all the way down to the local level. Yes, we have some women mayors. We only have maybe a half of a hand in terms of a governor, right? And maybe, we can count that. But and now we're talking about presidency, but don't we still need women in Congress? Don't we still need those women in congressional seats and raise that 1/3 to a higher level for elected positions?
Well, the short answer is yes, right? We definitely need that. But two things can be true at the same time.
Okay.
We're going to elect Kamala Harris and still know that we need to do better with the representation of women at state and local levels. I mean, it is the case that we are ready for women when we vote for them. It is also true that women often are not asked to participate in the electoral process. Most of the women who run and women who participate, you can think about Congresswoman Barbara Lee,
right,
had this story. It's because somebody recruited them to do it and said, hey, you should run for office. It's like, right, I could. I mean, it's, again, what Shirley Chisholm said in 72, why not me? Right? I am going to run for that nomination. And I think a lot of it is women are considered to be caregivers, especially when we think about women who run for office. There aren't many who have young children, for example. And then when we think about the women who run and are not married or not partners, right? The scrutiny they get. Look at what happened to Stacey Abrams, right? How people tried to pick apart her personal life. I think there are a number of reasons why women and why Black women in particular choose not to run, because the level of violence, and I don't mean like physical violence,
no, I know
emotional violence.
Yep.
That gets done to you. I mean, you get picked apart for your weight, for whether you have a husband or not, whether you have a wife or not, whether you have children. Well, what are your children doing? How much money do you have? What's your family life like? I mean, you just get destroyed sometimes. I mean, even for the way your hair grows out of your scalp, right?
You see that.
I mean, we get so much scrutiny. So I see why a lot of women either put off running for office or just don't, because what you have to deal with, it can be really horrendous. And I think that's why we don't see, in addition to people not thinking that they're capable or not, or, I think there's sometimes as women, this is not scientific, this is just me talking as a woman, we tell ourselves no before other people can. And I think we seem to think that like there are all these prerequisites for office, and there really aren't in most cases. Do you live in the jurisdiction? Do you live in the district for your city council? That's it. Can you get your name on the ballot? Can you get people to sign for you? The barriers for entry at local level are really low. And that's where a lot of important things happen. School boards, right? All of those kinds of things. Alcohol control boards, right?
Absolutely.
If you care about those kinds of things. They're super important. And I just think sometimes people think, I don't know enough to do it. But there literally is no test for this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Men feel very comfortable doing that. Women, less so.
Even though some of us as men, we know damn well we unqualified for certain roles. But just because we use our male privilege. Huh?
Exactly. And when does that stop anybody? If at least if there's one positive about the Donald Trump years, it has shown us that you can be as mediocre as you want, and you can not only aspire to the highest heights, you can achieve them.
That is some very real stuff. Very quickly, the Gender Parity Index, which was first launched in 2013, they award each of the 50 states a score letter of A through F in ranking based on the state's proximity to gender parity. The top states this year, Oregon and Maine received A grades for the second time, but the case of New Hampshire has dropped from an A. Despite Oregon and Maine's success, the majority of states earned D grades, and the remaining 22 states earned B and C grades around this issue. Louisiana, the only state to receive an F for 8 years straight from 2016 to 2023, made major gains electing its first woman attorney general, Liz Murrill, and second woman Secretary of State, Nancy Landry. So we're to the point that you just made, Doc, saying that you can, it doesn't always have to be governor or, congressperson. You're talking about those local positions that truly make a difference. If you're Secretary of State, if you're the Attorney General, I come from a place in Baltimore where we had a woman mayor, constant women mayors, right? We have we had a woman Attorney General. That tradition continues, right? Had continued for some years. So this is it's that we have to think that we are the positions of power. Just very quickly, when we thinking about these roles, how do we get the next generation of young women to think about, look, you may not be president, but you can still make a difference as an attorney general, as a secretary of state? How do we get those young sisters and those young women prepared for that?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think local is always my answer. I'm a fan of local and state politics. I think we often talk about the presidential election because it's so sexy and we imagine the president has way more power than they actually do. But when you think about real power and think about moving the needle in your community, that's city council, that's school board, that's in D.C. we have zones, right? So we have these neighborhoods, these commissioners, right, that make all kinds of decisions about zoning.
Right.
Usually it's less than 500 people that elect those positions. So I say, look, hyper-local and then move through the ranks.
There it is.
Right? You can go from local to state.
There it is. There it is.
And then
make a change and make a difference. Bust open them doors, Dr. Carter.
Thank you.
Hey.
As always.
Absolutely. Dr. Neon B. Carter, it is always a privilege and a pleasure to talk to you. She serves as the Associate Professor in the School of Public Policy at the University of Maryland. She is a regular contributor here on Areva Martin in real time. And I'm just so happy that we have her as one of our great voices to give us her analysis on all that we're going through. Dr. Carter, look forward to reconnecting with you very soon. But thank you for being a part of the conversation today.
Thank you for having me, Farajii.
Absolutely. Folks, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, let's continue the conversation on the other side. I got my sister Sharon Reed checking in as we talk about all things politics, entertainment, and so much more. Stay with us. It's Areva Martin in real time on KBLA Talk 1580. We'll be right there.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Amber Payton. Here's the latest on the Black Information Network. The man who held up Brooklyn's so-called Bling Bishop live on camera was sent to prison Monday, but for less time than the bishop he robbed. A federal judge sentenced Saquon Pollock to 7.25 years in prison for the 2022 robbery of Bishop Lamore Whitehead during a streamed sermon. Pollock argued for a reduced sentence because Whitehead's been convicted of stealing from his parishioners, but the judge said